The first subject in this series is Crash Bandicoot. That's right, the orange marsupial that has driven gamers to the breaking point for the past 25 years now, and that includes me. It's a love-hate relationship, and while I do love the little bugger, he has literally driven me up the wall. Weighing in with a difficulty rating of 7 to 7.5 out of 10, and a time estimation between 15 and 25 hours, which if I'm being honest, is a lot more for me. Crash may not sound too intimidating at first glance, but if you're anything but good at platformers, it's definitely a challenge. So why is it considered a difficult platinum? Well, there's one trophy and 26 reasons, those being the relics, or simply put, the time trials. Not counting boss stages, for practice makes perfect, you must get a minimum of a gold relic on all 26 levels by finishing in the allotted time window. So just time trials, right? Not too bad. Well, not quite, as you can't die either, so you need to master the stages to speed through them unscathed. Now it's true some levels can be completed in a minute or two, but it's usually those with the tightest times where even one non-fatal fall or mistake will ruin that run. And yeah, while the longer 4 to 5 minute levels have more lenient time windows, it's naturally easier to die on them given the increased amount of chances to make a mistake due to your shaken nerves or just sweaty palms. Besides those relics, we're also required to collect 26 gems for the ultimate gem path, which requires all boxes to be broken in a stage, including any bonus areas. Now that doesn't sound too bad, but there's also 6 colour gems mixed in with them which have the same conditions, but again, you can't die on the main stage. There's no time limit to worry about, so it's not as skill based as a trial, but you still have to break boxes that put you at an increased risk of falling into the abyss, an enemy, or just a fire pits, and on the longer missions that can be infuriating to miss a jump and have to go back and recollect all the boxes, including the annoying bonus stages. So that's why it's considered difficult by the community. But what did I specifically find hard about this game? Well, despite my tenure with Crash Bandicoot being my first PlayStation game back in 1996, yes, I am that old, I am ancient, I am quite average at platformers if I'm being honest. I wouldn't say bad, but I'm not good either, I'm fairly in the middle. Obviously that's what average means. Rambling much? Yes. So for me, I would say this is more like an 8 to 9 out of 10 difficulty. So let's start with Sunset Vista, probably my bane of my run, not counting the DLC. It clocks in as the longest level, which is where I struggled the most. When it comes to platformers, I suffer from something I like to call choke-itis or platformitis. I can learn and master segments, but I always find a way to muck it all up at the end. It's like my monkey brain kind of activates and ignores the part of me that knows I can't make that jump, but it orders my hands to cock up and yeet me into my death anyway. The level has some nasty climbs on rotating platforms that can waste 10 or 20 seconds with one mistimed jump if you actually survive at all. And the flurries of extruding stone walls designed to push you over the edge if you don't remember the patterns or react in time, as well as plenty of bats and jumping reptiles to keep you on your toes. A similar mid-length level that had me flustered for a while was Native Fortress. It too has some climbs where one slip will probably ruin your run, but it comes packed with turtles, shield men, and a horde of traps including fire pits and spike logs. A combo up next with the infamous suspension bridge levels, that's right, Road to Nowhere and the High Road. Now a lot of people rate the latter one a lot harder, but back in 2017 when I actually got the gold time on Road to Nowhere, I had significantly more trouble than I did with the High Road, which I did last week, and it only took about an hour to finish. In the original Crash, both were a lot easier as it was a breeze to hop onto the ropes and cheese your way to an easy victory. Now this is still possible in the remake, but Vicarious Visions changed Crash's rectangular hitbox to a more pill-shaped one, meaning you slide off surfaces like a greased pig. Now I admit I did have the cheese in the back of my head, sort of like a safety net, but my personal pride wanted to try my best at doing it without walking all the way across. Does that mean I'm a glutton for punishment? Perhaps, but boy was it satisfying when I finally got the gold times. There's actually nothing too complicated in these two besides a really tight times, and there's very small planks to land on, so it's more of a test of precision rather than anything else. The lab is a perfect example of a short stage, but one that requires a lot of precision and timing with doors and floors on timers you must activate yourself. And there's also blobs bouncing at you, lab assistants lobbing chemicals your way, electrical arcs to get past, and even TNT crates to box jump on at the end, all within about a minute. Yeah, that's how tight it really is, it's super complicated. I'd have to say the worst part was actually syncing up the electrical arcs at the start, as it's so easy to be milliseconds off, which will result in many frustrating fails seconds into it, run after run. The final moving floor arc were a particular pain to learn, with hesitation always messing up my timing. A bonus shout out would be Stormy Ascent. Now it's a free DLC stage, but considered the undisputed king of ass kickery when it comes to Crash Bandicoot 1. I'm not a big 100% guy unless I really love a game, so I have no problem stopping at the platinum, but Stormy Ascent has insulted my gaming pride and I must conquer it. It's a longer, ramped up version of Slippery Climb, a stage that's also quite infamous from the core game. Since I had little issue with the climb, I walked into Ascent with an air of smug confidence that I was soon shattered by the realisation of how difficult it was. My initial run cost me roughly 40 lives and plenty of face palms at my own stupidity, and while the gem run only cost about half that, the gold trial brought me to my knees. The time is lenient, so lenient I was at the final jump within 30 seconds several times before jumping into the abyss, but eventually I did conquer Stormy Ascent. Now we all get frustrated at games, usually lobbing vulgarity towards the screen as the AI decides to be cheap and spam us with grenades, or we get pit maneuvered in a racing game causing us to spin out, and that is usually the AI's fault. It's something interfering with you, and I was kind of doing the same thing with Crash Bandicoot all my life until I realised something. Crash is unlike any other game in that sense. It's all your fault. That's right, there's no AI to pull a fast one on you, there's no random variables to trip you up. Literally every failed run or misstep in Crash Bandicoot is your fault as the player. That epiphany had a surprising effect on my frustration levels, replacing blaming the game to blaming myself and looking at why I failed. It didn't completely eliminate those fits of frustration, but it helped me focus on correcting my mistakes and to keep calmer overall. Another tactic was learning a level in segments, because after all, the game is one big set of patterns, so breaking them down to stages proved extremely helpful, especially on the tricky segments in the longer levels. Going back to Stormy Ascent, which is a perfect example of this tactic, you'll get better at the level, you'll master the early segments of the stage, only to fail a jump 2 to 3 minutes in, since you're not as seasoned on those parts. If you keep restarting, you'll probably make it eventually, but those trouble spots I found using the checkpoint system to train myself, for those spots helped significantly on my actual trial attempts. For the infamous bridge levels, it may take you just as much time to learn how to rope walk to finish the level normally, but there is a middle ground, and that's using the ropes at jumping points to streamline segments. It's not as difficult as learning to reliably walk on them, but it can help massively. I'd say it took me around 30 minutes of practice to master the rope hopping technique, and it was well worth the stress. My final tip would be to take your time. It may sound counterintuitive, but you'll learn a level faster if you simply complete them, even on your trials, even if you're too slow for the gold relic itself. Repeatedly failing due to rushing will just frustrate you and make you rusty at the later segments, creating a sort of snowball effect. I honestly doubted myself 3 years ago, but when I came back to the game this time, all those little tips and maybe a bit of mental maturity actually helped me get past all this and just be really patient through it. It was still extremely mentally draining, and that's why it's on this list as the first title on Platinums that broke me. Now, it was still tormenting me all the way up until I recorded this video, and as I said, I did conquer Stormy Ascent right before recording, maybe a few hours ago. And I'm proud of myself, and I had to do it. I could not get the platinum on Crash Bandicoot 2 and 3 until I had 100% on Crash 1, because I wanted that nice stack, you know, Crash Bandicoot 1, 2 and 3 on the list perfectly. Crash Team Racing, I'll go back to that and maybe attempt it later, and Crash Bandicoot 4, I'm definitely trying it, and I'm guessing it'll be a contender for this series, but that's for another time.